Make my Monday a fun day by opening up iTunes and rating and reviewing Marijuana Today Daily. Just search for the term marijuana, find Marijuana Today Daily, and leave a rating and review. Thanks so much. This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is sponsored by our friends over at McCabe Law LLC of Portland, Maine. If you're looking to get into the legal marijuana industry in Maine or Massachusetts, or you're already doing so, then you owe yourself a call to Chris McCabe and his team of legal specialists over at McCabe Law LLC of Portland, Maine. Find him online at mccabelawllc.com. That's spelled MCCABE lawllc.com. mccabelawllc.com. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Monday, July 31st, 2017, and you're tuned in to episode 299 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. Our top story of the day kicks off an all-Massachusetts top slate of headlines, with Governor Charlie Baker on Friday signing into law legislation legalizing adult-use marijuana. As regular listeners know, this piece of news has been a long time coming, with recent efforts by state lawmakers surrounding a 6-person conference committee who worked to merge the disparate House and Senate versions of legalization legislation after voters approved adult use back in the fall. Baker was quick to hedge himself while signing the bill on Friday, saying, quote, "I worry terribly about what the consequences over time will be, and having spent a lot of time talking to folks in Colorado and in Washington. There are a lot of pitfalls we have to avoid. But look, the people voted this, and I think it's important that we put the program in place and deliver a workable, safe, productive, recreational marijuana market for them in Massachusetts." Unquote. Following closely on the heels of Governor Baker signing legalization into law, the Office of Massachusetts Treasurer Deb Goldberg announced her 5 picks for that state's 25-member Cannabis Advisory Board, a group that will make recommendations to the state on how to regulate the industry. The remaining 20 members of the board will be filled by the governor and Attorney General Maura Healey and should be announced later today, as the deadline for filling the spots is tomorrow. Swing over to Mass Live for a full list and bio rundown of State Treasurer Goldberg's 5 nominees. I will note that my friends Chanel Lindsay and Jamie Lewis are 2 of the 5 named. Chanel is an entrepreneur, lawyer, and activist who, with my other friend Shalene Title, was a big part of ensuring that the recently signed legalization legislation contains some measure of protection for social justice concerns. In full disclosure, Chanel's company Ardent Cannabis is also a past advertiser on the show. Jamie Lewis is a founder of Colorado-based Mountain Medicine and an all-around cannabis expert and badass. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com and on our Twitter account at mjtodaydaily. Rounding out our all-Bay State top headlines is the news that the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court will hear a case involving the question of the constitutionality of the state's medical marijuana law, specifically the vagueness of the part of the law regulating how many plants medical patients can grow at home. State law has no plant limit enumerated, instead limiting patients to having enough for a 60-day supply. In 2013, a medical patient was the victim of a home invasion and called police for help. After officers arrived, they searched the house and found 22 marijuana plants growing in the basement. They arrested the man who called them, medical marijuana patient Joshua Richardson, after determining that his 22 plants would provide more than a 60-day supply, a charge Richardson's lawyers have protested in court. In August of 2015, Richardson was sentenced to 18 months in jail. We'll obviously report back on this one as the case resolves. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out on headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, McCabe Law LLC of Portland, Maine. Whether you're at the stage of needing to get your legal Maine or Massachusetts cannabis business up and running, or just need to optimize your ongoing legal operations, then you need to get in touch with Chris McCabe and his team over at McCabe Law of Portland, Maine. Their wide range of legal expertise means that they have you covered from lease to license and from seed to sale. Make sure your cannabis assets are covered by engaging with McCabe Law of Portland, Maine. You can learn more about them and find out how to get in touch by opening up mccabelawllc.com, which is spelled MCCABE lawllc.com. mccabelawllc.com. All right, time for the blitz. Keeping the Massachusetts headlines train going for one more story, we have a good piece in the Boston Herald on the advantage medical marijuana license holders will have as the state's marijuana industry transitions to include adult use sales. In short, it's good to be a medical license holder, which will provide dispensary operators at least a few months of lead time in selling to the adult use market next summer, as adult use only license holders have to get seed to soil and their plants large enough to harvest. As anyone who's grown marijuana knows, that process can take a few months. NPR produced a good piece looking at the gray market marijuana situation Washington, D.C. finds itself in as local desires to implement more progressive cannabis policies runs into opposition from federal lawmakers intent on imposing their will on the District of Columbia at the expense of local control. This is another good one to click over for the full read. 4 state lawmakers from Maine are in Colorado today on a fact-finding mission that they hope will better inform them as they and their state lawmaker colleagues craft the rules and regulations governing the adult use legalization passed by Maine voters in the fall. State Representative Teresa Pierce, a co-chair on the state's marijuana committee, is spending today and tomorrow in Colorado touring different parts of the state's legal marijuana industry along with State Senators Roger Katz and Mark Dion and Representative Donald Marion. Senator Katz is the other co-chair of the Maine Marijuana Legislative Committee. As the state of Vermont begins its 3rd year of allowing for the cultivation of industrial hemp, Vermont Public Radio looked at some of the experiences the dozens of hemp farmers have had so far. From the sounds of it, except for the dangers of having overly zealous stoners steal your crop, the business of hemp cultivation has been a good one for Green Mountain farmers. This is another good one to open up for the full read. Mary Jane has a good piece up that is one of those headlines that tells a deeper story than you might first suspect. In Colorado, police have recently participated in educational seminars where citizen volunteers get high so that the cops can test them to see if they can spot the most stoned drivers, with different participants using different amounts of cannabis. While the number of stoned volunteers was too low to be scientifically valid, with just 4 presenting to the first class of cops, it nonetheless nicely illustrates how difficult it is for police to make objective designations of who is too stoned to drive. As you might have guessed, police were, more or less, unable to clearly come to a consensus on the level of impairment for each driver in terms of if they would be arrested in a real-world scenario. This remains one of the bigger unresolved issues for legal cannabis. Governing Magazine took a long look at marijuana consultant and former Colorado State cannabis czar Andrew Freeman that you want to open up and read in full. Freeman spent 3 years leading the Mile High State's effort to implement adult use marijuana during a time where he had no template to follow. Having helped establish that template in Colorado that other states are now following, Mr. Freeman peeled away from government work and is starting up FreemanKowski, a legal cannabis consultancy he's working on with partner Louis Kowski. These guys are talking to a lot of government officials about how to best implement legal marijuana, so it's not a bad idea to know who they are. And finally for today, Mashable has one of those great videos where they pull together people who haven't smoked pot before and then get them really, really high. You might have seen an earlier version where 3 grandmas got together to get stoned. Well, this time it's 3 grandpas, with each having totally awesome reactions to their first time smoking marijuana. While these videos are fun, I think they also serve an important purpose in showing folks who haven't gotten high before that smoking cannabis is, on the whole, a pretty mellow and relaxing affair. Open this one up and then send it to that grumpy uncle who still gives you guff about marijuana being something only hippies care about. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our Twitter account at MJTodayDaily and visit our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, McCabe Law of Portland, Maine, and to all of our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today.
One take, Shay. One take.